Speaker, respected Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum and a very good afternoon. On behalf of Bangladesh Institute of International and Strategic Studies, BIISS, may I take this opportunity to welcome you all to the lecture on the EU in the Indo-Pacific, a committed partner for stability, prosperity, and peace, organized by BIISS. Today, we are honored to have among us Mr. Gabriel Vicentin, EU Special Envoy for the Indo-Pacific, as the guest speaker. Dear audience, today's program will begin with the opening remarks by the session chair, Ambassador Kaji Imtiaz Hossain, Chairman, BIISS. Ladies and gentlemen, may I now request the chair of the session to kindly commence the program. Thank you.
Thank you. Perhaps it may be a good idea for me to go over to the podium and start. Excellency Mr. Gabriel Vicentin, EU Special Envoy for the Indo-Pacific, Professor Imtiaz Ahmed, Director General Fayaz Murshid Qazi, EC's honorable guests, members of the media. Assalamu alaikum and a very good afternoon to all of you, and welcome to the first lecture in our eminent person lecture series this year. I would also like to welcome very warmly our participants and guests who have joined us virtually. The theme of today's lecture is the EU in the Indo-Pacific, a committed partner for stability, prosperity, and peace. For the first lecture in our eminent person lecture series, we are honored and pleased to have His Excellency Mr. Gabriel Vicentin, the Special Envoy of the European Union for the Indo-Pacific. We are also happy to have amongst us two distinguished panelists, Professor Imtiaz Ahmed, Professor of International Relations and Director, Center for Genocide Studies at Dhaka University, and Director General Fayaz Murshid Qazi of Ministry of Foreign Affairs. I would like to welcome them as well and convey our deep appreciation for joining us in this lecture. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, at the outset, I pay my humble tribute and deep homage to the father of the nation, Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, whose lifelong struggle and visionary leadership brought us our independence. I also pay my deep homage to 3 million martyrs and 400,000 women and girls who made supreme sacrifice for our independence. This year, Bangladesh has turned 51. As an independent nation, Bangladesh's 51-year journey has been a transformative one. Emerging as a war-ravaged, impoverished country in 1971, Bangladesh has come a long way in its development journey. And this has been achieved through bold policies to build self-reliance and the resilience and tenacity of our people. Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina is leading the journey from the front. Last year, the UN General Assembly unanimously adopted the resolution to graduate Bangladesh from LDC category, thus fulfilling the long-cherished aspiration of the nation. Bangladesh will graduate from the LDC category in 2026. Our next perspective plan envisions a developed Bangladesh by 2041. We have launched a pragmatic development strategy to achieve this, one that will include rapid yet inclusive economic growth, structural transformation, and self-reliance. And we wish to further promote women's role as active agents of change and transformation in our society. Throughout this journey, which we'll call a transformative journey, the European Union has been a constant and trusted partner. Mutual interests and commonalities of views and values on many global issues, including international peace and security, counterterrorism, climate change, strengthening of democratic institutions and practices, expansion of regional cooperation, women empowerment, and sustainable development have contributed to this enduring partnership between Bangladesh and the European Union. The European Union is one of the largest trading partners, a significant source of remittance, and a source of investment for Bangladesh. Bangladesh has been a beneficiary of EU's Everything But Arms scheme, extending duty-free access to all our exports. As we graduate and approach the graduation, the EU will have a significant role to play in accompanying Bangladesh through this transition. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, over the next 45 minutes or so, Mr. Vicentin will take us through the EU's strategy for cooperation in the Indo-Pacific. The joint statement, I would like to quote from the joint statement issued following the Bangladesh-EU fourth round of diplomatic consultation on 26 October states in Brussels that took place last October. Bangladesh and the European Union have agreed to step up cooperation on climate action, digitalization, connectivity, and security, taking into account the EU strategy for cooperation in the Indo-Pacific. In this regard, both sides discuss initiating a regular political dialogue for providing strategic guidance and intensifying foreign and security policy cooperation. Distinguished guests, the Indo-Pacific is a vast region spanning from the east coast of Africa to the Pacific Islands, holds 60% of global wealth, 3/5 of world population, contributed to 2/3 of pre-pandemic global economic growth. The Indo-Pacific has been growing in importance geopolitically, strategically, and economically, principally for the major powers, but also for the countries of the region. The three major global powers dominating and to a large extent determining the destiny of the region are the United States, China, and the EU. However, the emerging in and intensifying geopolitical and geostrategic competition of major players is leading to a power politics, and one may conclude, perhaps not unjustifiably, that we are heading for a world of confrontation and not collaboration. Bangladesh, whose foreign policy is guided by the dictum of the father of the nation, friendship to all and malice to none, does not want to be a part of any adversarial agenda. Bangladesh hopes that a peaceful and collaborative approach would be the guiding force setting the partnership agenda for the future based on a shared vision of a free, open, secure, and inclusive Indo-Pacific region for the peace, stability, and shared prosperity for all. Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, before I invite Mr. Gabriel Vicentin to deliver his lecture, I would like to briefly introduce him. Mr. Gabriel Vicentin was appointed the EU Special Envoy for the Indo-Pacific in September 2021. He has been an official of the European External Action Service since 2011, where he served as head of the Parliamentary Affairs Division. Earlier in his career, Mr. Vicentin was an official of the European Commission and served in the Director General of the External Relations as a representative of the European Commission to the Committee for the Civilian Art Crisis Management of the EU. Mr. Vicentin was also head of cabinet to the last president of the European Community for Steel and Coal, and during the Italian presidency of the EU, he was detached to Rome as advisor on European affairs to the Ministry of Industry, Energy, and International Relations. Mr. Vicentin holds a degree in law and is specialized in international community law. With those few, not so few words, may I invite and request our chief guest, Mr. Vicentin, Gabriel Vicentin, to kindly take the floor. You have the floor, sir.
Yes, you asked me for half an hour, we'll try 10 minutes. Okay. Hello, thank you for being here. Hi to everybody. Wow, a third one. Okay, good. So, many thanks for your kind introductory words. I think that we all find ourselves with a high degree of alignment to the principles you have just outlined, to the very wise words you said, and the very famous line on which you base your overarching principle for dealing with neighbors and dealing in the world, which is friendship to all and threaten to no one. I think this is the best possible way to look at international relations. In a very simple line, it resumes all. So thank you for that. And of course, I am delighted to be in Bangladesh for the first time. I already experienced the beauties of Dhaka. I arrived yesterday night, and I have seen as well how nice it is to live here and the daily life of all of you in commuting. The traffic here is a fantastic experience, and I think it's unique in the world. So, but that's part of the charm, and I'm sure it's going to be solved soon. But really, I carry it with you. I mean, when I think about all of you waking up in the morning and going to work and going back in the evening, then I feel very empathic. So but that jokes apart, I'm really honored and delighted to be here. I already attended this morning an event at the university, Independent University, and I have already had a first glimpse and impression of how deep the knowledge on international affairs, international relations, and as well as on the European Union is here in Bangladesh. So I was really impressed by the quality of your students and the quality of the knowledge of the academic world here. So when I say I'm delighted to be here, I really mean it. So Bangladesh is, of course, a close partner of the EU and a force for stability in this region and in the wider world. Bangladesh is a powerful voice on so many issues with regional and international reverberations, from climate change to sustainable development and the fulfillment of the SDGs. From the leadership and humanity that this country has shown in the context of the Rohingya refugee crisis, to the brave engagement of so many Bangladeshis in UN peacekeeping operations. This event today takes place at a time of exceptionally dire developments in Europe. Russia's aggression in Ukraine has brought war to the EU's doorstep, and we are witnessing the immense human, economic, and moral costs of the conflict. Russia's blatant violation of Ukraine's territorial integrity and sovereignty and of the UN Charter are serious threats to the rules-based international order. The human cost of the war is unfathomable. The large number of civilian deaths, the starving and depredation suffered by Ukrainian citizens trapped in siege situations, the 3 million people who have been forced from their homes and country, seeking shelter and safety within the EU. And if you allow me, you refer to the 51st anniversary victory. I am also pleased to be able to address you on the last day of the victory month, March, which is very meaningful for Bangladesh. And actually, this very month, your very story tells us all about the people's right to self-determination, the integrity and respect of national borders, the need to stand up for one's rights and the right to a national identity. And this is a great lesson that Bangladesh bears, but it reverberates with what is happening as well in these days, far back in Europe. But I think it is a mutual lesson. So the EU is rising to the multifaceted challenges posed by this way of aggression, in close cooperation with partners such as NATO and the United States. We are providing support to Ukrainian forces and wide-ranging financial assistance. We have triggered the Temporary Protection Directive to ensure that a safe berth awaits those who flee Russian aggression and cross the border to the European Union. This war of aggression casts a shadow over the entire globe and reminds us of the importance and power of partners such as Bangladesh. The EU looks to Bangladesh for your long-standing attachment to a rules-based order, respect for the UN Charter, and advocacy for peace in the UN. including, of course, your leadership on the UNGA Culture of Peace resolution. We must work together as the ramifications of Russian actions affect everyone, from rising food and energy costs to disruptions to banking and transport links. As the High Representative Borrell, my boss, said, the world must remain united against the flagrant violations by Russia of the UN Charter, international law, and human rights. This unity would put the rules-based international order and its ability to serve common interests in peril. The overwhelming support in favor of the latest UNGA's resolution condemning the dire humanitarian situation caused by Russia's aggression of Ukraine and its indiscriminate attacks against civilians demonstrates how the international community is resolutely united. Bangladesh's effort in defense of the principles and values that underpin the rules-based order are an indispensable contribution to such unity. The war in Europe will not distract us from our commitment to engage with our partners in the Indo-Pacific region, as we set out to do when we published the EU Indo-Pacific strategy, as you remember, back in September 2021. On the very contrary, the situation in Ukraine has highlighted the importance of strengthening and defending the international rules-based order. And our resolve, the EU's resolve, has been strengthened. In this context, the EU remains committed to carrying out its Indo-Pacific strategy, as the region is central to the present and to the future of the international order. We look to Bangladesh as a key partner in this endeavor, as it shares similar interests and values indeed. Indeed, the Indo-Pacific has emerged as the world's new center of gravity, both in economic and geopolitical terms. The Indo-Pacific creates 60% of global GDP and 2/3 of global growth. It is also the second largest destination for EU export and home to 4 out of 10 biggest trading partners of the EU. In addition, 40% of the global trade going to the EU comes from the Indo-Pacific. Allow me also to stress the fact that the EU is also a resident actor of the Indo-Pacific. It's just a faraway region with important economic ties. There are more than 1.6 million inhabitants EU citizens residing on EU soil. They are French, but our French friends will allow us to consider them as Europeans too. So we always say that the EU is a resident actor, and mind you, the closest neighbors of New Zealand and Australia is the EU with its French territories. So don't be mistaken. The EU has also a clear interest in terms of territorial presence in the Indo-Pacific. So these are all the positive aspects. But all of these such opportunities, however, come with daunting challenges to the regional order. The region is under pressure as the geopolitical competition between the two giants, US and China, intensifies. In the Indo-Pacific, unsolved disputes over land and maritime borders linger, hampering the development of trust amongst the region's populations and nations. Bangladesh has successfully resolved some such disputes with its neighbors in a way that sets an example in terms of recourse to international law and in faith in multilateralism. And please let me remind that to us, you will also, if you take the time to read the EU strategy on Indo-Pacific, you will see more than once UNCLOS mentioned as the keystone of multilateralism in the maritime domain. So a word of praise also to Bangladesh for having solved its disputes with its neighbors through an international multilateral scheme like UNCLOS. As EU, we have a vested interest that the regional order remains open and rules-based. The survival of the rules-based international order in which we are deeply invested is at stake. And we believe that we, both the EU and Bangladesh, have a major contribution to make. This is recognized by the EU's partners, who view us as a trusted, consistent, and reliable interlocutor. And let me remind you that the relation with Bangladesh, the diplomatic relation with Bangladesh, we enter into their 50th anniversary next year between the EU and the Bangladesh. So this is really, we have been done a long way in terms of common trust and common cooperation. And of course, the EU recognizes Bangladesh's strategic importance as the very core of the Bay of Bengal, a space of increasing geopolitical and economic importance. A multilateral approach can achieve great goals, strengthening the rules-based order in the economic, digital, and maritime sphere. These are the main reasons why we remain committed to step up our engagement in the Indo-Pacific and with Bangladesh notably. By working closely with our like-minded partners, the EU has identified 7 priority areas. First, sustainable and inclusive prosperity, which includes all the economic and the trade relations. Green transition, with all the actions to counter climate change and its effects. Ocean governance, the rules of the access to the seas, the fight against illegal fishing, and the fight against the pollution of the oceans. Digital governance and partnerships. These are all the kind of partnerships which stem from digital to research and development to culture. Connectivity, of course. Connectivity is the backbone of our strategy, and I will say more later on. Security and defense. And finally, human security, with all the actions directed at countering the pandemics and strengthening the national health systems in the Indo-Pacific. So with the release of the Global Gateway policy in December 2021, the EU reaffirms its role as a committed connectivity champion, because the Global Gateway spells out the EU's understanding and way to connectivity. This is where the EU explains its philosophy and concept of connectivity, which promotes a sustainable, a green, a transparent, a high quality, and a high standard approach to connectivity. As the EU Commission President von der Leyen underscored, our aim is to build links and not dependencies. And the EU institutions and the EU member states aim to mobilize up to 300 billion euros to promote connectivity worldwide and, of course, including in the Indo-Pacific, where demand is growing with phenomenal speed. And what is the philosophy? The philosophy is practically to have projects which are, in technical terms, bankable, but which means that they are based on debts which are sustainable in the longer run. And this means to create links and not dependencies. The financing will be a blend of public and private money. The financial institutions will be called to participate, both public in terms of development agencies and private in terms of investment banks. The European Investment Bank also will participate, and there will be a mix of grants and loans. so that the grants will make it appealable to the private sector to chip in and participate. So this is the European way to connectivity, which is a bit different than other ways to connectivity. And as a trusted partner, we want to work with Bangladesh on many of these issues. The EU aims to strengthen cooperation with Dhaka, of course, on connectivity, to support the realization of Bangladesh's and the region development goals. And here, let me open a parenthesis, because we often hear about investments in connectivity coming from other partners than the EU. And so the perception is a little bit false. Perception is contrary to reality. So contrary to a widespread perception, the EU is and remains the largest worldwide global investor with a total stock of 11.6 trillion euros, compared to the US with 6.8 trillion, China 1.9 trillion, and Japan 1.5 trillion. This is the reality, and these are the facts. So, just a little bit of a break, if you allow me. So, the EU keeps its markets, its internal market open, and is a leading partner in the delivery of humanitarian and development assistance. Bangladesh is the biggest beneficiary from EU's preferential trade scheme, EBA, everything but arms, enjoying almost 60% of the relief duties worldwide. Bangladesh has made great strides to develop its economy, as its imminent graduation from LDC status demonstrates. This remarkable achievement is a testament to the hard work and innovation of the Bangladesh government and people. And it is also a great success story for our long-lasting cooperation. We will continue to cooperate to tackle global challenges, from the pandemic to climate change and the digital transition. We aim to enhance and strengthen our digital partnerships to set a fair, transparent, and open standard for digital technologies and their various and multiple applications. On climate change, we are supporting adaptation efforts. We will continue to meet our share of the 100 billion climate finance pledge and support the fulfillment of NDCs pledged under the Paris Agreement. We welcome Bangladesh's global leadership on climate change, including through the Climate Vulnerable Forum. And it goes without saying that Bangladesh is on the front line of climate change and will face daunting challenges, including increasing climate-related displacement. This has regional and global implications and hence requires support and solidarity from the global community. In Bangladesh, the EU is providing support to help Dhaka meet its goal of sourcing 40% of its energy needs from renewables by 2041. We are aiming to mobilize substantial assistance through the blending of grants and loans and the involvement of the European Investment Bank, now rechristened as a global climate bank. As a disaster-prone country, unfortunately, Bangladesh is also a fundamental partner in the fight against climate change. Green and inclusive development is an utmost priority in the 2021-2027 multi-annual indicative program for Bangladesh. Moreover, through the European Green Deal, the EU will work with Bangladesh to strengthen its adaptation strategy by learning from Dhaka's own national adaptation plans and ensuring that partners live up to their commitments on climate finance. We will also strengthen our maritime and cyber capabilities and collaboration with partners in this domain. Our Crimario program is enhancing maritime domain awareness through information sharing, capacity building, and training in the Western Indian Ocean. Capacity building, training of Coast Guards and law enforcement agencies are at the forefront of our priorities. It is a matter of sustainable development as well. And the EU has a long-standing tradition for capacity building of its partners. And the most important point is that the EU strategy remains inclusive and open to all potential partners. Our message is one of cooperation and openness, not of exclusion or confrontation. Strategic goals such as combating climate change, ensuring maritime security, or promoting connectivity in the Indo-Pacific require, by definition, a concerted effort. And again, this is why our strategy, and I repeat myself, is one of cooperation and not confrontation with anybody. The EU does not seek to take sides or join as additional competitor in the power game in the region. But on the contrary, the EU aims to build bridges and strengthen the resilience of our partners, helping them to withstand unhealthy pressure. The EU strategy on the Indo-Pacific is an invitation to our partners in the region to dialogue and to address the issues at stake, upholding international law and defending values and principles to which we are all committed, with democracy, international order, and human rights at the forefront. Concurrently, we aim to strengthen and enhance our cooperation with like-minded countries in areas of common interest, to diversify our political and economic partnerships across the Indo-Pacific. We will strive to achieve these goals, convinced that they are supportive of the rules-based international order based on international law, peace, free economies, and which benefits the region and the world at large. As already remarked, the EU and Bangladesh have a growing variety of common interests. Our relationship has transformed over time, reflecting the expanding scope of our cooperation. It has evolved from development assistance to an all-encompassing relationship based on equality and joint interest in tackling common challenges. Bangladesh's response to the Rohingya refugee crisis has impressed the world. Providing shelter and sustenance to over 1 million people for the last 5 years is a challenge of epic proportions with implications for regional security and stability. We stand shoulder to shoulder with Bangladesh in meeting this challenge. All are agreed that the refugees must return to Myanmar in a voluntary, safe, and dignified manner when this becomes possible. However, the political realities in Myanmar are not encouraging in that respect soon. The EU, and I stress it, will continue to provide substantial development and humanitarian assistance for the refugees and the host community till it will be necessary. And we will continue to advocate with Bangladesh, the OIC, and the others in the UN for a solution to this crisis. We will continue to provide every assistance to bring those who perpetrated unimaginable crimes against the Rohingya to justice. This is essential for the Rohingya refugees themselves, for Bangladesh, for the region, and for the world. I would like to close by reaffirming the EU's commitment to expanding and strengthening and deepening our ties with Bangladesh. Our engagement in the Indo-Pacific region as partners and friends can make a valuable contribution to regional peace and stability on the basis of mutual interests and common challenges. Let us work together to make the Indo-Pacific more prosperous, interconnected, open, and secure. Thank you very much.
It's a throne, it's not a chair.
Yes, we treat everyone as kings here in Bangladesh.
And it's also a democratic kingdom.
Yes.
You have 4 kings at the same time.
Our poet, I mean, the greatest Bangla poet, Rabindranath, and I don't know whether I would be able to translate it. One of his poem says, "Amra shobai raja amader ei rajar rajotte, noile mora rajar sathe milbo ki satte," meaning that we are all kings in our kingdom. Otherwise, how would we interact with each other at the level? So he spoke of equality and the connection between the king, the ruler, and the common people at the same plane. So that's why
Right.
it's a very democratic. We believe in democracy. But thank you very much, Mr. Gabriel Vicente, for laying out a broad perspective of the EU strategy for the Indo-Pacific. You have rightly pointed out Bangladesh has been at forefront of many issues, and our partnership goes back. We'll be celebrating the 50 years of our partnership, which has been a very robust one. And we have been very appreciative of the support that we have received, not only on our trade front, but in several other fronts. Your support for the displaced Rohingyas whom we have sheltered for the last 5 years, almost we'll be doing that in August 5th year, has been tremendous, both politically and as well as from humanitarian perspective. So we are certainly very appreciative of that. We have 2 distinguished discussants today, panelists, to throw some light both from academic perspective as well as from the perspective of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. We have very pleased to request the Director General of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in charge of West Europe and EU, Mr. Fayaz Morshid Qazi, to take us through for, I suppose it's 10 minutes, but you have a few minutes plus and minus, and then I'll come to Professor Imtiaz. Fayaz.
Distinguished Chair, Bees, Mr. Vicentine, Professor Imtiaz Ahmed, and distinguished audience. Many thanks indeed to Bees for responding to our request to hold this conversation, and of course to the audience here for being here with us. It has been quite a fascinating presentation by Mr. Vicentine, so I'm kind of wondering what to add to that. And I'm quite sure that Professor Imtiaz Ahmed will take a theoretical approach to this whole issue. And I wouldn't actually dare do that. But as Ambassador Hossain, the chair, pointed out, maybe I would like to address the issue from a practitioner's lens as to how we look at this issue at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. I would probably start where the chair had stopped. I mean, how Bangladesh looks at the notion of Indo-Pacific. And I'm glad that our view about Indo-Pacific resonates with what Mr. Vicentine said towards the end, that we do not also consider the Indo-Pacific to be a space for confrontation, It can be a space for healthy competition. That is not a possibility that we would like to rule out, but we do not see that there is or there should be any scope for unhealthy confrontation. Instead, as our Honorable Prime Minister had articulated it quite succinctly, we nurture or we subscribe to a vision of the Indo-Pacific that is free, open, peaceful, secure, and most importantly, inclusive. And again, we are particularly delighted to hear the notion of inclusivity and not exclusion reaffirmed by Mr. Vicentine. And that is why Bangladesh thinks that we do have this alignment with the EU's approach to the Indo-Pacific, which creates the opportunity for us to engage with the EU in meaningful terms. We have taken close note of the EU's Indo-Pacific strategy, which was released in September. I had the opportunity to go through the document once again this morning. A fascinating piece of writing, which I would recommend everyone to read. And it starts with the EU's vision and principled approaches to the Indo-Pacific. And when we look at the list of principles that have been enunciated, we again realize how close these principles are to our own value system as we conduct our foreign policy or diplomacy. Most of these principles are cast in stone in our own constitution, and our entire foreign policy imperatives or obligations emanate from those principles. So that again also creates us a very comfortable space for alignment with the EU's Indo-Pacific strategies. We can perhaps have discussions or at times divergences on some finer details, like the question of abolition of death penalty, for example. But then again, these issues are not again set in stone in our societal context. We are having continuous conversations about some of these basic human rights issues that the EU attaches importance to. And we have reason to believe that as our society moves along, as our society marches onwards, there would be continuous evolution on these questions as well. In the strategy itself, strategy document itself, if one looks for reference to Bangladesh, there are probably 3 of them that I could detect. 2 of them are in a footnote and 1 perhaps in the main text. The document was released in September, but Mr. Vicentine is here already in March, end of March. So I would consider that that is already kind of a big success for our overtures to the EU that, sorry. Sure.
Nice to see you again after the dinner we had in Brussels.
Yes.
Had there not been COVID, I would have been here much earlier. Huh?
Thank you.
I'm here because of COVID only now. Otherwise, it could have been already in October, November.
So fantastic. So from what I'm trying to say that from 3 references to having the special envoy on Indo-Pacific himself here present, very much amidst us, that's already quite something. That's already quite a progress. And we do appreciate that and thank the EU delegation here, including the ambassador, for facilitating that. I think Mr. Vicentine has talked about the 7 priority areas that this EU Indo-Pacific strategy lays out. Maybe what I'll try to do in the remaining time that I have is to make a plug for Bangladesh or try to highlight why we think that Bangladesh can actually be considered to be a like-minded partner on many of these issues. I like one expression in particular, the partnership of equals, that one of the EU commissioners had said in reference to the Global Gateway strategy. We would very much like to act as a partnership, as an equal partner, as part of the shared communities of interest that the EU is currently looking at. On the issue of sustainable and inclusive prosperity, I mean, it goes without saying that we have very robust trade relationship with the EU. Mr. Vicentine has himself said that how Bangladesh is the largest beneficiary of one of its GSP schemes, the Everything But Arms initiative. And we are currently in conversations with the EU to see how we can continue with these trade preferences following our LDC graduation. The COVID-19 pandemic has actually demonstrated the resilience and adaptability of Bangladesh's entrepreneurs in the global supply chain. After we managed the initial blow from the pandemic, our manufacturers could actually roll out production lines for personal protective equipment and other things. And that perhaps proves once again that Bangladesh, if we can enter into such partnerships, can prove to be a reliable partner in the global supply chain, including for the EU. And that is one message that we would like to impress upon our distinguished speaker here in particular. On the issue of green transition, again, Mr. Vicentin had very kind and generous words to say about Bangladesh's role in that context. And hopefully following this visit, we will have a first round of climate dialogue, a dialogue focusing specifically on climate actions and climate issues between Bangladesh and the EU. Very recently, you may be happy to hear that we have joined the 30 by 30 initiative jointly launched by France and the UK, which aims at preserving 30% of global land and oceans by 2030. It's going to be difficult for Bangladesh, especially for a land-scarce country like ours. But even then, as we always try to pack our punch above our weight, we try to undertake this obligation, and we would like to join the EU's efforts, the EU member states' efforts in protecting global diversity through those initiatives. On energy and transports, again, it goes without saying that the renewable energy becomes a central pillar increasingly in our relations with the EU. And as you have hinted at, the European Investment Bank is already engaged in rail sector projects in Bangladesh, which have sub-regional dimension. And one area that we are particularly looking at is renewable energy or hydropower-based cooperation at the sub-regional level, on which we are hearing expression of distinct interest from the European Investment Bank's side. And Bangladesh, being a proponent of sub-regional cooperation, of regional integration, we would definitely look forward to advancing our conversation in that respect. On ocean governance, of course, as we look at the vision for a free, open, inclusive, and secure Indo-Pacific, we cannot but emphasize the importance of secure sea lines of communication, of the freedom of navigation. That is absolutely crucial for us as we sit at the apex of the northern apex of the Bay of Bengal. And on that issue as well, both bilaterally and multilaterally, we continue to cooperate with the EU. On fisheries sector, we have exchange of information in the area of Indian Ocean Tuna Commission and other such mechanisms. On the issue of protecting or having marine protected areas, you may have all noted that we have recently introduced another MPA or marine protected area around the St. Martin's Island, which had been globally acclaimed. So again, on ocean governance, Bangladesh do have certain important viewpoints to actually share. On digital governance and partnership, and in the context of digital Bangladesh, it perhaps need not or does not need any reiteration. What I would like to say here that as the EU considers a number of Indo-Pacific countries for digital partnership agreements, I would like to place here that Bangladesh would be happy to actually explore such opportunities. We are currently working on data protection law, which is something that EU attaches importance to. In fact, as part of our Digital Security Act, the data protection issue is already covered, but the government is currently working on further elaborating that particular issue. We are talking about cooperating under the Copernicus satellite for Earth observation and disaster management. And we would look forward to formalizing this cooperation through an agreement in the near future. On research and education, we are happy to hear that thanks to the Ambassador's initiative, there is a growing number of students under the Erasmus program. And this is also something that Bangladesh is interested in. And as I said somewhere the other day, our Honorable Prime Minister is particularly putting emphasis on strengthening our competence in medical research. And we believe that this is also an area where we have enormous potentials to cooperate with the EU. On connectivity, again, Bangladesh wishes to transform itself into a regional connectivity hub. There had always been this potential, and we feel that we are currently at a stage where we can find the opportunity to realize that aspiration. So in that context, again, we have taken close interest in the EU's Global Gateway strategy, and it's a value-driven, value-based strategy where, again, Bangladesh would be happy to connect. I'm personally very happy to see that in recent times, a number of EU member states are actually proposing air connectivity agreements from their side. And after we recently introduced this direct shipping line between Chattogram port and Ravenna port in Italy, similar interest is being evinced or expressed by other ports across the European continent. So again, these are all promising signs that we can definitely broaden our conversation in the connectivity domain. Now, next is security and defense. Here, of course, we tend to hear some different viewpoints. But again, as we look at it, Bangladesh is already cooperating closely with EU and others, not just bilaterally, but in the multilateral context, especially on a number of non-traditional security issues, be it counterterrorism, be it preventing violent extremism, be it combating trafficking of all sorts, including human trafficking, be it combating cybercrimes. We do have extensive cooperation with the EU and other partners on all these areas. In addition to that, we note the EU's interest, we take note of the EU's interest in further improving or strengthening maritime security in this part of the world. And on that front as well, Bangladesh is engaged with many of our partners, including to improve maritime domain awareness. And in this context, you have, Mr. Vicentine has mentioned the Crimario project, which is something Bangladesh is closely and very assiduously looking at, so that we can try to engage with this initiative and try to combat some of the shared challenges that we face in the maritime domain. I would have one request for BEAS here, actually, in this context. The EU has its own CSTP, which is the Common Security and Defense Policy. I'm sorry about that. And also the EU's security cooperation in and with Asia, these two initiatives. My request to our colleagues in the BEAS would be, please help us to understand the implications if Bangladesh were to consider joining these initiatives. The EU has been inviting partners in the Indo-Pacific context, especially to join the CSDP. We have seen countries like Vietnam, which had recently partnered with the EU under that front. And with our very proven contributions in UN peacekeeping, there is perhaps no reason why Bangladesh should essentially feel shy about it or reluctant about it. But then again, that is my personal view. It would be helpful if you could give us some evidence-based understanding as to what are the possible implications for doing so. So again, I would end by saying that while we cooperate in areas of security or even defense, Bangladesh would remain cautious about aligning or associating with any defense or security-based alliance in this region. But that does not mean that we have been invited to join any such alliance. Let me make it very clear unequivocally that we have not received any such invitation, but that's where we would probably continue to draw a line in line with our traditional non-alignment policy, which we now package as strategic neutrality. That distance we will continue to maintain. But in terms of cooperating in security or defense fields, any constructive approach, we would be remaining open to that. And lastly, human security. Again, this need not any further reiteration. The pandemic has made it abundantly clear that why we need to work together on global health governance, especially with vaccines rollout and so forth, which our Honorable Prime Minister has been promoting to be considered a global public goods. We would continue to remain in close contact with the EU. And in this context, it would be remiss of me if I were not to thank the Team Europe for their generous donation of vaccines, which have allowed us to build sufficient stockpile for the foreseeable future, and also allowed us to vaccinate 90% of our target population group so far. So thank you again to Team Europe for that very concrete contributions. On disaster risk reduction, this is the only area where the EU strategy actually mentions Bangladesh, but I hope by taking up so much of your time, I try to illustrate why Bangladesh can be and should be considered in other areas as a potential like-minded partner as well. And that does not mean that I am undermining our capabilities in disaster management. I personally felt very flattered when I saw this communication from one of the EU commissioners on crisis management, as he offered Bangladesh to have a regular dialogue on disaster preparedness. This is definitely a big recognition for what Bangladesh has been able to achieve. So lastly, to conclude, absolutely, the Ukraine crisis is casting a shadow globally. And you have rightly said that the Rohingya crisis actually casts a huge shadow in our regional context. And that remains one of our major generational challenges in addition to the others that we talked about. So again, much has been said by the EU's role in the context of the Rohingya crisis. And we would look forward to continued meaningful engagement of the European Union to help address this situation. We are happy that this particular crisis had been mentioned in the EU's strategy document, and we would hope that in addition to other regional challenges like in Afghanistan and so forth, this issue will also continue to remain on the forefront of the EU's preoccupation with the Indo-Pacific. Bangladesh actually sits just next to ASEAN. EU considers ASEAN to be the central feature of its strategy in the Indo-Pacific. So when ASEAN becomes prominent, there is no reason why Bangladesh should not also gain that relevance in that framework. We are already part of the ASEAN Regional Forum, which is a regular dialogue on important strategic issues. And in that context as well, we would look forward to advancing and continuing with our conversations. So I think I have exhausted my time, and I would thank you all very much once again for bearing with me, and thank you, the distinguished chair and other colleagues for this opportunity to the Foreign Office.
Thank you, Fayaz, for laying down in as much clarity as you can our approach to use the strategies, not only the strategy itself, but a whole gamut of the partnership that we have with EU and the number of opportunities. I mean, the areas that we are interacting in a very, very effective way. It's also has highlighted why Bangladesh should not find a more rightful place in its conversation, its dialogue with the EU, and have certainly made a very strong argument. I'm sure Mr. Vicentin will carry back that sentiment that exists at MOFA. I've also taken note of your request, and our colleagues will look into it and see how we can also support your thinking process towards the request on CSDP. May I now request a distinguished Professor Imtiaz Ahmed, Director, Genocide Studies, Professor of International Relations, Dhaka University, a very, very distinguished academician. He is everywhere in the intellectual pursuit and intellectual sphere. And personally, it is my distinct pleasure to welcome you. And sir, please enlighten us.
Thank you. Thank you very much, the chair, my good friend, and with the same name, Imtiaz. And thank you, Mr. Gabriel Vicentin. I listened to you very, very keenly, and you have laid down very comprehensive picture of where European Union is going. And I think you have rightly pointed out that Bangladesh remains the core of your relationship in South Asia. And of course, whatever the 6 or 7 things that you have been doing, Bangladesh remains wholeheartedly with you. Let me also thank Fayez for presenting and backing Gabriel, actually. Almost like you probably got set together in making your presentations. So now let's let's have some debate, and I'm sure those who are here have come for the debate, so that we can go back with our minds, if not agitated, at least one can say energized. One thing I need to flag here, and I'm sure Mr. Vicentin is also aware, that the world is moving towards a multipolar world. There is no way you can stop that. That's something that one has to see, and then see how one can manage, because we never had a multipolar world, civilization speaking. Because back in 18th century onwards, you have Pax Britannica, and then of course we went to a bipolar world after the Second World War, and that got dismantled. Somehow after the dismantling of Soviet Union, we ended up with the unipolar, and now it's multipolar. And when we talk about multipolar, also keep in mind that some of the countries are civilizational countries. They had longer civilizations and longer ways of looking at the world. And here, of course, I have to bring South Asia, including Bangladesh. Don't forget, Bangladesh may be a very young country from 1971, but we can go back to 6th century BC without any hesitation. And you roam around Bangladesh, you will see how far you can go back. We have a very, 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 very old civilization long before the United States was born. But you have also in South Asia, India, which is also a civilizational country. And you have a regime in India now who would vocally would say, look, this is India. Don't tell us what to do. And you have seen consecutively the way they have abstained, saying that that's none of your business, why we are doing what we are doing. Don't teach us principles. Civilizational also with China. Don't forget, China is also a civilizational country. And back in the 18th century, China was the largest economy in the world. I think we forget that. And that in 18th century, undivided India, and I want to emphasize the word undivided, undivided India was the second largest economy in the world. And in that undivided India, Bengal was the richest province. So what we have today in China is a re-rise of China. What you have in India is a re-rise of India. And what you have in Bangladesh, though cartographically massacred Bengal, but still a re-rise of Bengal. So my point here is, these civilizations have tried in many ways of making the world better. Even in the context of peace building, there has been enormous sacrifice. and intellectual inputs. And I can go back to Ashoka, I can go back to Lalon and Tagore and Gandhi, and you can go on and on. And there is huge, kind of followings they had when it comes to peace building in South Asia. It's a very old, we are very old peace builders. And something that the chair has flagged in the beginning about the foreign policy principle of Bangladesh as foreign, friendship towards and allies towards none is not post 1971 innovation. This was made or absolutely written down and flagged in 1970 when we were part of Pakistan. It came out in the Awami League's manifesto under the leadership of Bangabandhu. And don't forget, in 1970, Pakistan was a member of CENTO and SEATO. In the same manifesto, Awami League made it very clear that if we ever become, win the election and get hold of the government, we will get out of SEATO and CENTO. That was 1970. So the point here is our friendship towards all, Malays towards none is not realism, is not something that we are trying to balance, it's not even that. It is civilizational in that we are not into any conflicts. Don't forget, Bangladesh literally suffered, well, directly 2 genocides, actually 3 genocides, you can say. Some of us, we refer to 1947 as a genocidal partition. I'm sure you're familiar with 47 history, but we had a genocide in 1971. And I, as a student of class 9, I was part of looking into that genocide. I left my parents, I went to India, I slept on the pavement, literally on the pavement. So we are a generation, we have come out of a genocide. So for us, war is not something that we get excited. It doesn't matter whether it's a just war or unjust war, because you can always define and redefine in whichever you go. Your heroes can become villains and the villains heroes. So one thing I think European Union, given that you also had a very traumatic history. You had a war where in recorded history, the largest number of people were killed. And this is Second World War. And that's only 70 years back. 66 million people died in 6 years. 6 million Jews, not to mention 22 million Russians. And of course, you also had Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So the point here is, out of the trauma, at least what I see is European Union, because I'm sure, Hitler probably would have committed suicide in any way if you have seen the friendship between Germany and France now. What on earth the Germans or French are doing now, we couldn't believe. So after all the trauma and the killing, the Europeans got together. So my point here is the principle that we cherish so much has a civilizational content. And that's precisely the reason why our Prime Minister allowed the Rohingyas to get in. Believe it or not, even her party members were against it. I remember debating with them. They would not say, no, we would not allow, this is not our problem, this is Myanmar's problem, will not. Only when Prime Minister said, no, then the party leaders changed. We had a tough time telling them this. And my point was, I said, look, a genocide has happened. Because the Rohingyas, this is not the first time that they were thrown out. Back in 70s and the 90s, they were also thrown out. But we did not have evidence as much as we have now that some genocide has taken place or crime against humanity. So my point here is this helping the Rohingyas also had a civilizational context. Because if you look at 1.1 million people, this is a larger population than Bhutan. Bhutan's population is less than 800,000. Here you have 1.1 million. Bhutan, you have a king, the person who looks after 1.1 million is younger than me. So, and this 1.1 million or a Bhutan inside Bangladesh became Bhutan inside Bangladesh only in 3 months, whereas Bhutan took 60,000 years. And if you have not visited the Rohingya camps, I would request you to visit and see how Bangladesh has managed it. I was there 2 weeks back, and I had to salute everyone because I am familiar with refugee camps back in 71. I know what refugee camps are, how people sleep. And as I said, myself, I slept on the pavement of Agartala, India. So the very fact that when the issue of Rohingya comes, and when European Union dilly-dallies in giving hard sanction, we become confused. We don't see then the merit that we cherish about Europe and European civilization. And we become confused because we see what on earth is going on. And I can give you some, information on this. I think GSP was mentioned. That's also European Union is dilly-dallying. But you had no problem in giving that to Cambodia in 2020. Now, if you can give Cambodia, why not Myanmar? And so immediately this issue of global chain comes, and then business interest comes. Then, all the lofty words or the good words come lofty or become, people would say, they are not serious. They are all eager to make money. And I say this because as I was listening to you, I saw that, and I may be wrong, but more than 4 or 5 times you said rule-based international order. You really emphasize that. And I think it's very important to have a rule-based international order. But when we don't see that, I was telling the other day that the number of sanctions that were given against Russia, if half of it is given against Myanmar, things would have changed. So the point here is we are confused that here, when you're dealing with Russia, and here I have to say, as an academic, that we are confused that why would you have a NATO? You don't have CENTO, you don't have SEATO. Why do you still have NATO and expanding it from 12 members to 30 members? It doesn't get into our head. Most of my students always say, sir, Prof, we don't understand why, who is the enemy here? And more importantly, we really don't understand when the United States have all these military bases in Europe. In Germany, 119, in Italy, more than 40, in UK, 24. So, we get confused. So the here is you don't have CENTO, you have this, and those have been dismantled, but you still have NATO. And here, this is a clear case, and this is very difficult because even American scholars are openly saying that, it's kind of a proxy war, and that this whole issue of NATO pushing towards East contributed to this conflict. And I'm not using Russian sources or the Chinese sources. I don't know Russian. I can't speak. I can't read Chinese. I'm giving all the American sources. So the point here is when you don't address that, because today or tomorrow, and I can tell you, I'm an international relations person, a student of international relations. I can tell you that you have to address NATO. There's no way out, since the world is going towards a multipolar world. And there's no way you can challenge that. The human aspirations have come up. There's a globalization contact. Whatever I'm seeing, whatever I'm saying now can be seen in Sylhet, as it can be seen in California, as it can be seen in Tokyo and Australia simultaneously. We never had a world like this, never. So we can't go back. And the quicker it is realized by the authorities in the United States particularly, I think, and I'm particularly talking about the military industrial complex, I guess the civilizational contribution that Europe has made, and Europe's civilization entry is very recent, relatively speaking, compared to South Asia or China. But I think it's an important one, and we don't want to lose that. But wars are not going to do that. The conflicts are not going to do that. Mahatma Gandhi way back said, eye for eye makes the whole world blind. Here, in the case of Europe, we are seeing this eye for eye. Somebody has to blink, and the quicker you make an arrangement. And for a while, actually, some of us, we thought that European would make a difference, but it looks like it doesn't. It has got into this wave with the United States. And I think the time has come for Germany, France, and all the European countries to think differently when it comes to security. I don't want to be what you call giving ideas to that, but I'm just trying to flag that. My final point will be the Rohingya issue. And I just want to flag something so that you can take it, because the Rohingya issue is, day by day is becoming complex. And one of the important things that is happening, which has not been flagged so much, is the drug issue or the narco terrorism that Myanmar state is involved in. And the name of the drug is yaba. What is happening is Rohingyas are not consumers of drugs. They are actually middle person carrier. Bangladesh also is not really a drug addicted country for some reason. Could be for the weather or whatever, I'm not sure about Imtiaz, but but very few would say, I'm into drugs. It doesn't go. But point is, drugs makes money. Yeah. So what is happening, and we had some killing in recent times in the camps, and I work very closely on the Rohingya issue, and a bulk of these killings had to do with the drugs. So what is happening? They're making money, and they are money laundering it or sending the money way to bulk of it is in the developed countries, either to Canada or to Australia and all. So the point here is, unless you come very hard on Myanmar, and it is very important, not only on the issue of Rohingya, which is genocidal, but more importantly, the very fact that drug is being used to infect other countries, and then the moment you have drugs, you have small arms. They go together, illicit arms. Now here, I think the European Union must come very strongly. That would be my humble suggestion. Very strongly on Myanmar, because everybody knows that the yaba industries are inside Myanmar. It's not a secret, because you can't hide it. Everybody, we don't produce, Bangladesh is consume yaba, but we don't produce yaba. But the international community is silent. European Union is silent. I think the time has come for you to look into this matter. Hopefully, when you go back, you will think about it and see what can be done. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Imtiaz. As always, you always stir up the crowd and bring in issues very exciting, and for the purpose of the record and make the record very clear, I am miles and thousands of miles away from drug, either as a consumer or a dealer. So I do take it that the comments of yours was for humor. But coming back to that's the seriousness of the debate. I mean, some of the things that you have brought out to the table are certainly very well articulated. It goes without saying, but it also reflects a broader perspective of the people they look at. I mean, it then becomes one of the fundamental questions that is often asked, whether there is a double standard in dealing with issues. Is it based on convenience and that we keep at times blind eye? Perhaps that strategic approach could be at times like that, but then that may lead to a difficult situation whereby wholehearted support and collaboration may not be forthcoming in a broader sense. Having said that, let me open the floor, but before that, let me thank both of our discussant panelists who have laid down very, very carefully that clearly that the partnership with EU is very important for us, a partnership that is enduring, has endured, and then we look forward to a partnership further strengthened and in multifaceted way. The floor is now open for your observations and comment. And when you do take the floor, kindly introduce yourself. We have also distinguished guests online who joined us. Today, we will start with those who have raised hand online, and then I'll come to the floor just for the sake of maintaining equity. We have always been starting with the floor, but here I've raised two hands are raised now. I will first request Ambassador Dola, who had sent a note, and then I will come to Brigadier General Dr. Shaukat Hussain for their observation. Ambassador Dola, you have the floor, sir. I believe the mics are, my colleagues would have looked into it to make sure that the mics are open, unmuted, huh? Okay, thank you. Ambassador Dola, if you are not in a position to take now, may I then request Brigadier General Dr. Shaukat Hussain to kindly take the floor, sir.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much for inviting, and it was very interesting topic to discuss and very interesting issues that come up, particularly the points raised by the DG and also point raised by Dr. Imtiaz, who I'm definitely a fan of. I have small three queries, or put it as questions, whatever it is. The first is to Vincent, Mr. Vincent, thank you very much for giving us a perspective. I have one query, if you could clarify. You talked about Rohingya. You talked about the Rohingya issue becoming dangerous, and it's the prime concern of Bangladesh, not only because of the refugee load, but also it's becoming an international or regional security issue, as I can read and understand on the problem. Now that US after fourth year realized that there is a genocide which has been committed in Myanmar, and they've called it as a genocide after 4 years. And I could give a lot of reasons why. But the EU is still having a preferential trade, the non-defense, with Myanmar, and it is increasing, sir. So how do you think that you can help Bangladesh by pressurizing Myanmar when you have opened the trade with Myanmar? Second, for the respected Director General of, I will just bluntly say one thing. The defense cooperation against who? Who is the power, or who is that country that IPS is set up? It's very clear and very simple. The answer is with me, but I would like to hear from you. Therefore, would Bangladesh, so far maintaining a very equilibrium from doing all this, would Bangladesh consider of going into IPS or whatever, Indo-Pacific? To Dr. Imtiaz, sir, one of the largest member of Indo-Pacific, that is India, had a talk with China. They had business with Russia when the Russia is termed to be aggressor or is fighting Ukraine. And now the Russian foreign minister is likely to visit Delhi. And India has voted whatever it is, not voted, not voted, or absented. And then there's a information that RIC is being formed. That's a Russia, India, China cooperation. In that view, how you see India as a pivotal country for Indo-Pacific security dialogue? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Shawkat, for your comments. Is Professor Dawla, Ambassador Dawla back? No. Then I can come to gentleman at the very back. Can somebody hand over a mic to him? Please introduce yourself.
Thank you, moderator, for giving me the opportunity. My question is to the EU Special Envoy for the Indo-Pacific. So, on your remark, you basically say EU doesn't take any side in the power, the regional power game in this region. So my question is, while you are initiate the IPS, you are clearly took a side of USA. Why China is not included in IPS? And my last question is, are you going to take part in the Belt and Road Initiative with China? Thank you.
Thank you. Gentlemen here, you have, yes, please.
Thank you, sir, for giving me the floor. I warmly welcome the EU Special Envoy in BEAS. Since I work here, I am a research officer of Non-Traditional Security Division. I have recently joined, and I have one question particularly to the team EU. Sir, you have already mentioned about the graduation, enlisted graduation, and indeed, whatever the economic growth and prosperity Bangladesh has achieved so far has a considerable amount of contribution from European Union, and we appraise that. Now, Bangladesh is in an economic transition. After 2026, we need more cooperation. As you have mentioned already that we have a long history of cooperation, but we need more from our all development partners, particularly from European Union. On that note, sir, how after 2026, that is our LDC graduation, European Union would extend its friendly cooperation that would be coming for Bangladesh. In addition, how do you see the pattern of the cooperation mechanism within the European Union framework, sir? Thank you so much.
Thank you. We'll take two more questions before we, perhaps three more questions before we request our panelists and the chief guest to respond. So we'll start with the gentleman just behind you and come to you, and the final one would be the young lady at the center.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. This is Alauddin Ahmed. I worked for Bangladesh Energy Regulatory Commission as a member. I was a broadcaster and faculty. I'm a retired person now. I will make two observations and pose one question to EU guest. Ambassador Imtiaz requested Professor Imtiaz to enlighten us, and he particularly enlightened me, and I'm sure everyone here and elsewhere will also be meaningfully enlightened by the quotation, Gandhi quotation that he made. Eye for eye makes the whole world blind. I would request everyone here to go out and pass this message singly and simply so that it starts working. Another observation is about DG Fayaz speaking, and the way he pronounced Bangladesh. এটাই বাংলাতেই বলতে হচ্ছে, এত মমতা নিয়ে, এত ভালোবাসা নিয়ে বাংলাদেশকে বাংলাদেশ বলতে আজকাল শুনি না। অনেকে ব্যাং বলে, অনেকে এটা সেটা বলেন সরি। তো কিন্তু আমার একটা অদ্ভুত অবজারভেশন আছে যে বাংলাদেশের ভূমি থেকে যত দূরে সরে যায় মানুষ, তত বেশি বাংলাদেশকে বাংলাদেশ মনে করেন, অথবা ওপরের এশলেন থেকে যখন নিচে নেমে আসে, ইন দ্য লোয়ার এশলেন পিপল, তারা বাংলাদেশকে বাংলাদেশ ডিসেন্টলি বলেন। তো আমার কাছে মনে হয় যে মাতুর বদনখানি মলিন হলে আমি নয়ন জলে ভাসি, এই বোধটা যাদের মধ্যে থাকে তারাই শুধু বাংলাদেশকে সুন্দর করে বাংলাদেশ বলে, এবং বাকি সমস্ত কিছু তাদের সেইভাবেই চলে। থ্যাংক ইউ ফায়াজ। আর দ্য কোয়েশ্চেন নাও, sorry, honorable guest, I only praised the way he pronounced Bangladesh, the country, which was liberated by a big cost of many millions of lives and many things else, you know, probably. So so I told that in Bangla. Anyway, the question is to you, posed to you. Ambassador Imtiaz is okay, 100,000 miles away from yaba takers, yaba dealers, traders, he said. But I am not even 5 meters apart from yaba takers when I walk on the road. So I'm sure many things he will be doing. Yeah, only would you please do something? Put your feet in the shoes of a father whose son takes yaba here or anywhere in the world. And would you do something about the Myanmar as manufacturer of yaba? Our guest from EU, please. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mike down.
I have two questions to our guest speaker. I have two questions to you, Mr. Speaker. You have referred about the cooperation of fishing, something like that. Out of 7, 1 point is fishing, and we know about the WTO fishing subsidies resolution. So you have 7 points of cooperation. One is fishing or ocean resources. Ocean. Okay, it's different from the fishing subsidies resolution of WTO. There is a resolution passed by WTO. Maybe you are not aware. It is widely decided. I think Foreign Ministry also knows it. They are WTO going to regulate the fishing and control the resources, increase the resources and registration of the fishermen throughout the world. So it's not related to that. Different. Okay, thank you. Okay. So because we are concerned about that fishing resolutions as a development.
If you can make your point or pose the question that you wish to.
I want to know the difference between this proposition and the WTO resolution. Okay. Now the second point is you are talking about the human right, and also last month the European Union delegation came here to discuss about the GSP facilities after graduation and others. And also this GSP is expiring on 31st December 2023, next year. So when you talk about this human right and democracy, we have our own interpretation and you have your own interpretation. But what will be the end result? We are concerned about that.
Okay. Can you pass on? You have got mic there. Yes, please.
Assalamu alaikum. I'm lecturer Faria from the Department of Development Studies, Bangladesh University of Professionals. I had one question to the EU team. I wanted to know, how does the EU evaluate the Rohingya crisis in the context of the regional security? Thank you.
Thank you. This is the last question before I will request our guest and the panelists to respond. Yes, madam.
Thank you, sir, for giving me the floor. I'm Professor Tawhida Faruqi. I was the Director General of Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So I don't have any questions. Sir. Just I want to mention my feelings. As the Mr. Imtiaz, Professor Imtiaz explained, the ancient civilization of India, China, it was the part of Bangladesh. There some contributions there. It's very, very nice that I feel it that is encyclopedia. His encyclopedia of the civilization. I have seen the civilization. We are talking about the civilization, but I have seen the US civilization. What is that? I have on invitation of United Nations, I have gone to.
Madam, if I may request you to stick to the topic of today's discussion, that may be.
That is the thing is the about the Rohingya. Rohingya, as Mr. Professor Imtiaz explained, that the management of the Rohingya of Bangladesh. I was the freedom fighter, and I had been in India tent that time, and it was so we are in such a bad position. In comparison to that, I have gone to Rohingyas here, this tent, and have seen how, in comparison to that position, our position in India, they are in the paradise. This Hiroshima, this Rohingyas are in paradise here. So it's how Bangladesh, how we have our humanity. We have shown here and our prime ministers also, as Mr. our DZ has explained that beside all the opposition, our prime minister, she managed it. Thank you so much. I'm very much pleased, and I came to many things as we need to make us stronger. We need the help of the EUA, of course, and I was the Director General of the Women Affairs, Women and Children Affairs. I have seen many human trafficking, children trafficking, and the drug trafficking. So we should give. I'm requesting our guest that we should give emphasis on that. It's very pathetic. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I would request to start the response from our guest, Mr. Gabriel Vicentin, and then we'll ask Professor Imtiaz and DG Fayaz to respond to the question raised. Those ones that have been specifically addressed to them, and if they wish to respond to other questions raised, both from the floor and from our distinguished guest online. Sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for the very interesting and challenging questions. Maybe first I will refer to what my friend Fayaz mentioned, the CSDP and the mentioning of Bangladesh only once in the strategy. So actually CSDP is open for participation to third countries. You have two possibilities. It's either through what we called general participation association. So you can be associated to CSDP, and you can send personnel in every mission. So this is a framework participation agreement, is called, that can be done between the EU and a third country. And that is the case of Vietnam. Vietnam with us as a framework participation agreement, as it has, for example, Canada or Norway. Then you can also participate on an ad hoc basis, doing agreements on a mission per mission. You know that the European Union has 13 CSDP missions and operations in the world, one of which, the one which is probably the closest and the most of interest to you, is Atalanta, is the only maritime mission deployed in the Indian Ocean. So you have two ways to being associated to CSDP, either in a general way to all of its activities or on single participation. Of course, and this is something that has to be borne in mind, Once you decide to participate in a CSDP, you deploy your personnel, and this goes under EU command. That's the key issue for the participation. This is why some countries do not sign agreements, do not send personnel, but they join forces. So they do joint exercises, or they deploy people who cooperate with our mission, so that the personnel does not go under EU's command. So this is, it's open, and whenever you want to do it, you just have to highlight the intention to join, and that will be done. The mentioning of Bangladesh only once is not exclusive to the fact that all of the 7 chapters are of high interest. So it's, you see, the Indo-Pacific strategy should be seen in marketing terms as an open offer to the partners to join according to their 7 priorities and to do what we set out as our priority cooperation. So really, it's just anecdotal that it's mentioned only once. So all of the chapters are open for that. Then let's come to the most difficult ones. First of all, there are some issues which are exactly and precisely a bilateral Bangladesh-EU, and I will let the pleasure to answer to the bilateral ambassador, because I am an ambassador at large for the Indo-Pacific region, but you have a resident ambassador for Bangladesh, so he's the best equipped to answer direct question on bilateral relations. So preferential scheme on Myanmar, why do we keep it? The preferential scheme to Myanmar was granted before the military coup, before the military putsch, according to certain to negotiations which led to the granting of such a scheme, and Myanmar qualified for that. Now, of course, the choice of cutting the ties is there, but we have evaluated that this would impact, sorry to disturb your phone call, would impact very, very much on the livelihoods of the people in Myanmar. And that would be more detrimental to the persons, to the workers, to the middle class, to the low-income persons of Myanmar than to the military junta. The ones who profit from the still existence of the preferential trade scheme of Myanmar are the average people, are the workers, are the ones who actually take their daily living out of that. And this is why we have decided not to cut the ties. On top of that, the preferential trade scheme allows us to have a direct link of communication, and it's always good to be able to talk and to confront rather than not to. So this is why we are keeping the preferential trade scheme up. It's to benefit the people of Myanmar. Then defense cooperation with whom? We mentioned defense cooperation again. Again, I say that our strategy is open to everybody and to anybody who wants to cooperate with us. So it is an open offer also in terms of defense to the ones who want to cooperate with us. So also on defense, CSDP, you mentioned it. Port calls, so you can open up your ports to EU vessels who will visit you. We can do joint exercises in the military scheme, but that's an open offer to all. And this leads me to the question which came from the gentleman down there back on China. I would invite you to read a little bit better our strategy. Maybe you have not read it, you just heard of it. Because had you read it, you would have read the word China. And actually, our strategy for cooperation on Indo-Pacific is open to everybody, including China. When I say that the architecture of the EU strategy for cooperation is an open one, is not a confrontational, is based on cooperation, is precisely that. It's open to China. We engage with China. We have a partnership, which is called a strategic partnership with China. And I can already announce you that we have a summit meeting with China. So at the top level, the president of the council, the president of the commission meeting Xi on April the 1st. And we engage with China under every possible way, of course, in an adult way. We have a tripartite engagement with China. We engage with China as a partner on global issues. We engage with China as a competitor on an economic turf, and we engage with China as a systemic rival on others. So just to give you an example, we cannot do without China on global issues like climate change, and it's thanks to the support of China that the last COP26 in Edinburgh brought some results in terms of long-term reduction of the use of coal. And that was due to a cooperation with China. We engage with China as an economic competitor, of course, member of WTO. On every market, there are Chinese competition. Of course, competition is not bad at all. We are not afraid of China as an economic competitor, as long as the rules of the games are respected. We all have to compete according to WTO rules and according to the rules that we have given ourselves and we have abided to. We have an issue when those rules are not respected. Thirdly, we have the relation as a rival, as a systemic rival, where there are total incompatibilities, for example, on certain issues like the respect of human rights or the way that people are treated. And for example, the EU then pushes back and stresses its non-alignment with certain issues. Therefore, we even sanctioned some Chinese entities about the Uyghur situation in Xinjiang and about Hong Kong. And China retaliated against the EU by sanctioning members of the European Parliament and even sanctioning ambassadors of the member states to the Political and Security Committee. So you see, the engagement with China is multifaceted, but it's very adult and mature. We see and we play according to the rules and according to our common interest. Then on the Bangladesh economic transition and the need for more, that the EU should give more even after 2023, I will let Charles the pleasure to answer. On what does the EU do for a Bangladeshi father who sees his sons approached by drug dealer? We don't have a real law enforcement agency we can do that, but what I can tell you is the fight against illegal smuggling of drugs, of people, of arms is at the forefront of our activity. And when I talk about maritime security and the sea awareness, these are all projects which aim at knowing what goes on at sea, at the borders, at the land borders, and the fight against the smuggling of drugs is not only a matter for the EU, but it's also a matter for the international agencies, and we totally support that. It's an integral part of our actions. That, of course, on a daily basis here in Bangladesh, we don't have the means. We don't have an executive mandate to act as a counter-narcotic police in Dhaka, but maybe it will come. I don't know, but I don't think so. And it would not be in the interest probably of the EU. Then, other question: WTO illegal fishing. It's too different because the IUU, you know, is a UN scheme. WTO is another one. We address the enforcement of the IUU regulation under the UN. But I'm sure that the WTO resolutions are also a multilateral body. Therefore, we will follow with total support. I mean, we abide to multilateralism, be it WTO, be UN, that's it. But for the time being, our ocean governance part deals with amongst other things, with the IUU. I think I addressed it all. Maybe, Charles, if you want to have a word on this. Sure.
Yeah. Thank you. Yes. I mean, first of all, just to thank the IISS very much for organizing this. We really appreciate it. It was done at short notice, and I think it's been a great exchange of views, different colors of views, and that's also the good. Only by having a debate do we cast any light on issues. I mean, very briefly, of course, there's a clear roadmap for the transition. So what we all want, what Bangladesh wants, what the EU wants is a smooth transition after 2026. That's why there's a 3-year transition to 2029, where the everything but arms, duty-free, quota-free regime will still apply. And then we hope very much that the GSP Plus will kick in, and that will be basically the same terms as prevail now into free and quota-free access. And you mentioned the sort of conditions that are attached to that. Of course, there are quite stringent conditions, 32 conventions that need to be ratified and implemented. But the good thing is Bangladesh has already, as of a week or two ago, ratified all 32 human rights, labor, and environmental standards conventions. So in that sense, everything is well set for 2029. And now, of course, the key thing is that these conventions are implemented in due course. So we'll be working on those with Bangladesh as a partner, not as a finger wagger, but as a partner. And it's based on international standards, not on EU standards. It's agreed standards that both Bangladesh and the EU subscribe to. So I think we've had a taste today of the richness of the EU-Bangladesh relationship, trade, environmental, climate change, and we want to see investment increase as well. At the moment, we only have 1 billion European investment in Bangladesh, whereas there's 6 billion European investment in Vietnam. There's no reason why there should be such a big disparity. So part of my job in the next 3 years will be to boost European investment in Bangladesh to everybody's benefit. Thanks.
Thank you, Ambassador. I think now I'll turn to you because he was the one had taken a turn before you. So
Okay.
please,
No,
your time to bat.
no, thank you, Chair. There was one question by Brigadier Shakwat on India and Quad. I think I don't want to speak on behalf of India though, but my sense, knowing them and talking to them almost on a regular basis, I think India lost interest in Quad during the pandemic. And the reason is because of AstraZeneca. Let me be very specific. When the production, the raw materials were stopped by the United States, I think that was the end of whatever India had in mind in joining Quad. But keep in mind, there was a division in understanding Quad from India's point of view. And also I would imagine from Japan's point of view. I think 2 weeks back in the same room, we had the Japanese conference, and it was made very clear that their understanding was an economic competition vis-a-vis BRI. That was the idea. Both, I think, India and Japan had. On the other hand, the United States probably had different understanding of Quad, more security alliance, which India feels very uncomfortable. But the AstraZeneca issue, this is something I think more research probably will show. Knowing Indian policymakers, because it was almost a point of humiliation. You can imagine, they got even money from Bangladesh, but could not give the AstraZeneca, though the immediate cause was that they needed more. But you can see even today, only now they can give through COVAX. That particular issue, and if you listen to some of the media personalities, you'd know that they have a different understanding of Quad now. And I don't think they would go back to Quad. And I think it became clear to the United States also, and that's the reason from Quad they moved to Triad. If you want to use the AUKUS, the United States, UK, and Australia, which has a security dimension. So my take would be that that India, I don't think, would be interested on this issue. I just want to take a point that Gabriel was raising on the issue of not, this GSP and not suspending because the livelihood of the common people. I am not really sure whether that would go very far, because wherever you give sanctions, common people would be hurt. And it doesn't matter whether it's sanction against Iran or Cuba or North Korea, or even sanction against Russia. There are common people there also. But when you do that against Cambodia, for example, in 2020, there are a lot of common people there must have, I think, had hard times. But I was just reading this scholar from this Italian scholar, two Italian scholar, Arlo Poletti and Daniela Sicurelli. I don't know whether you're familiar with them, but they pointed out, and I just want to read it, and it got into my hand. So I was just reading it, and it says, according to Business Europe, and I'm quoting the authors, according to Business Europe, GSP withdrawal should be a last resort measure. It should be based on uncontroversial empirical evidence of the human rights violation perpetrated by the target government. Now, if the genocide in Myanmar, throwing away 1.1 million people into Bangladesh, if that is not a human rights violation, then what is human rights violation? I think the answer, I can understand, we have been diplomatic, I would say here, but my point as an academic would be, I think, to see it more as business interests winning over serious human rights issues. And this has not been the first time. And also European would not be an exception. I think other countries would probably do the same. I think what needs to be done, and this I want to flag and in a minute or two, is I think it's important to decouple, and this is the politics of decoupling, decouple the Rohingya issue from the economic and security interests, if that can be done. And when I say decouple, is that we understand, and I remember talking to Indian policymakers and also with the Japanese, that we understand that they have security interest and economic interest with Myanmar. But if you can decouple the Rohingya issue and then work out, because at this very moment, Myanmar's military or the military regime is very weak. If it is not weak, it would not have to kill more than, what, 1,500 people from last year to now, February. Killing people, killing its own citizens means that it is weak. It cannot be strong, because if it had been strong, then you don't have to kill people. So here you have a very, very weak regime in Myanmar. And so what is happening, X number of corporations, business corporations, they are bargaining with Myanmar and getting out of it. And I saw the statistics in the last year and now, last February and now, the investment from the West has got 17% up actually in last 1 year. So that clearly shows that the business deal are making. Now, how do you decouple? Well, one way I think Japan probably has shown, as you know, in the last resolution in the UN, Japan co-sponsored the resolution for the first time. And that's the decoupling. You decouple the issue. Similarly, India is yet to do that. India still abstains from this resolution. So you decouple the Rohingya issue, even by allowing the Rohingya diaspora to form a civil entity, because we don't have a Rohingya civil entity. European Union actually can help the Rohingya diaspora who are really working for Rohingya rights in many places of the world. If European Union can put some money to form this civil entity, because whenever we talk about Rohingya, the word ARSA comes and then everything stops. There is no civil entity by which they would be able to negotiate, then they would be able to flag their whatever they want. Because at the end of the day, it's not Bangladesh, Myanmar's problem. It is actually a problem between Myanmar and its citizens called Rohingyas. So here I think European Union can play a very robust role, and hopefully in future some changes will happen where this Rohingya diaspora will get support from the Europeans so that they can become a voice. Thank you.
Thank you. Fayaz, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you, sir. I had just one question from Brigadier Sakwat Hussain. Sir, it would take me a long time to actually properly answer to your question, and we can continue to have this conversation. I would just flag that when we look at the Indo-Pacific issue, I mean, we consider it to be kind of a vision for us when we talk about having an Indo-Pacific that is free, open, peaceful, secure, and inclusive. It is not really a question of joining the Indo-Pacific, because geographically, Bangladesh is very much part of the Indo-Pacific, and we cannot really deny that. And we have always remained open to any constructive ideas that advances our national security and national economic interest. And from that understanding, we had joined China's BRI. At the same time, we had joined Japan's Big B initiative, which now they're packaging under Indo-Pacific as well. So we have already aligned with different configurations or different constructs that have been put forward. And Indo-Pacific is something that we consider to be similar, an idea which has emerged and which is gaining more and more traction. And again, from that understanding, when our Honorable Prime Minister visited Paris in November last, you would see that in the joint communique, the two sides had actually talked about or reiterated their shared vision about Indo-Pacific. This is not something that we look through the defense prism or defense lens. We have no intention of countering anyone. And let me be very clear about that. Our entire defense posture has always been about deterrence. And the issues that have been flagged just now, even non-traditional threats like drug trafficking, narcotics running, and so forth, these are all security concerns. And if Indo-Pacific, cooperation through Indo-Pacific helps us advance some of this agenda, combating these threats, then of course, Bangladesh would remain a willing partner to join those initiatives. Again, I would end by saying that this is definitely not targeted at anyone, and this is not how we look at it. And we like the EU's approach because, as Mr. Vicentin has very eloquently said, that it remains open to any willing partner for the EU, with the EU to join. So from that perspective, we see there is scope for cooperating with the EU and other partners, not just on defense, but we actually talked about 7 different priority areas and different issues under that. Very briefly on the fisheries issue in WTO, it's specifically about fisheries subsidies, trade distorting fisheries subsidies. This has some relation to IUU fishing, and of course, there is some linkage. But in that process, I mean, Bangladesh does not have major stake in deep sea fishing as such, but we are trying to see that the interests of the small artisanal fishers are protected as part of this WTO decision. Now, of course, the WTO ministerial got suspended or postponed because of the Ukraine situation. We'll have to see how it unfolds, and then we'll take it forward. And thank you to Mr. Salahuddin, the broadcaster. I take it as a compliment and really appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Fayaz. And with that, let me thank our very special guest, this special envoy of the EU, Mr. Gabriel Vicentin, for visiting us, talking to us, and fielding very, very difficult questions. Some of them not necessarily in areas of competence, because the whole idea of this seminar and this lecture was to understand better the EU strategy for the Indo-Pacific. But we are extremely grateful to you and to Ambassador Whitley for making it possible for this dialogue. Our thanks also goes to Professor Imtiaz and DG Fayaz for also enlightening on the two perspective of how we look at the strategy. And then I'll simply end by saying that there's a tremendous scope and potential of cooperating, as we have been doing that for the past 50 years. The areas that have been identified in these strategies are the ones that are certainly very, very close to Bangladesh as well. So we look forward to another very robust era of cooperation with you, and the strategy would be very handy to articulate our relationship in a much robust way. We've already exceeded the scheduled time by 14 minutes. I'll make it 15 minutes because 30 more seconds will go. Just to thank our audience and participants both online for joining us, those who have joined here, and the members of the print and electronic media, and to my own team here in the Institute to make this lecture happen. Thank you very much. Okay, can we join hands to thank our...
The best, huh? Thank you so much. Thank you.